The modern style in the Western societies is to organize the masses with computers and to discourage every personal feeling.
You've been describing a society where the head, the thinking, is over here, and the body, the instincts and the emotions are here. And the problem involved in putting the head on top. What's wrong with our society?
What is wrong is that the whole collective consciousness doesn't evaluate eros anymore, and eros is personal. It is from one being to another being in a unique and personal way, and that is not evaluated. That is not. That doesn't count for anything.
They all seek their own existence, and to assure their existence against that complete atomization into nothingness or into meaninglessness. Man cannot stand a meaningless life.
Something strange is happening to the modern human being. We live in an age that tries to measure everything about us: our attention, habits, productivity, and movement, among many other aspects of our lives. Whatever we do, we are tracked, analyzed, and ranked. Behind all this data, the numbers and algorithms, the essence of our humanity is ignored and denied. It is judged as a meaningless side effect, as an illusion, and so we become flat and fragmented. More and more people feel replaceable, interchangeable, alienated from one another, from community, and from meaning itself. This crisis is not only social or technological. At its core, it is psycho-spiritual. As technology and artificial intelligence rapidly transform our reality, many people feel overwhelmed and fearful. The worst threat lies in our tendency to imitate the machines, in treating ourselves as pure, rational systems to be optimized. Our emotions turn into burdens. Our bodies become tools. Our relationships, cold and mechanical. We lose ourselves in the personas we wear to survive in a world that increasingly normalizes division, conflict, and psychic epidemics. Our lives drift further and further away from the inner reality of the soul. The danger is not only that the world is becoming computerized, the danger lies in imitating the machine.
The modern style in the Western societies, and beginning also now in China and in the Marxist societies, is to organize the masses with computers and to discourage every personal feeling. In the West, for instance, it's a rule in big business to rotate men around in different places just to prevent too much personal attachment. Personal attachment is looked at to be forming a clique. Personal feeling is discouraged. You see it also in political debates nowadays. One of the most negative things one can say about an opponent is to say he uses only feeling arguments. He's not logical. As if logic were the only way to argument. One can also argument with the heart. One can also protest with one's feelings, not only with economic logic. But nowadays the fashion, the absolute fashion is to be rational. And many schools of modern psychology are also rational. If something is wrong in the marriage, fix up the thing rationally as if it were a broken down car. And that is absolutely destructive to feeling, and it hits men and women equally, but women even more, because women in generally put more emphasis on personal relationship and personal feelings, and therefore they are hit first. And that's why women are nowadays so unhappy and in a general revolt against many things. They feel that they are thwarted of their life. naturally it hits men too, because if women go crazy and become disagreeable and cold, it reverberates on the sons and on the partners and on the men as well. But a man can stand a rationally organized world rather a bit longer than a woman. He's not happy in it finally himself either, but he can stand it longer.
You've been describing a society where the head, the thinking, is over here, and the body, the instincts, and the emotions are here. And the problem involved in putting the head on top. What's wrong with our society?
What is wrong is that the whole collective consciousness doesn't evaluate eros anymore, and eros is personal. It is from one being to another being in a unique and personal way, and that is not evaluated. That doesn't count for anything. You cannot say, I do that against the rules because I love so-and-so. The rules are the rules. The computer has spilled them out that way, and that's the way it has to be. The whole depersonalization and the whole mass organization of modern society is destructive to feeling.
What von Franz is naming here is a psychic wound in our civilization. When feeling is treated as inferior to logic, and human attachment is feared or judged as weakness, the psyche splits. Feeling, the bridge between head and body, is no longer trusted, and so we lose the gift that feeling brings, the way of discerning value. A way for the psyche to say, this matters to me, and this violates me. This is beautiful, and this is unacceptable. When a civilization stops honoring feeling, it trains people to betray the inner voice, our deeply rooted instinctual reactions. It pushes to adapt outwardly, while becoming inwardly estranged. Once that happens, people become easier to control and much harder to reach.
And that is the thing that people are looking for. An archetypal experience that gives them an incorruptible value. You see, they depend upon other conditions, they depend upon their desires, their ambitions, depend upon other people, because they have no value in themselves. They have nothing in themselves. They are only rational, and they are not in the possession of a treasure that would make them independent.
This is why the modern individual becomes so dependent on outer conditions, on achieving the ideal of success, receiving attention, and gaining approval for one's worth. The reason is that he has not touched an inner value that does not depend on circumstances. Jung says that people are essentially looking for an experience that carries incorruptible value. That's the missing piece. Without that inner center, the personality cannot become stable. It must constantly feed on comparison. It hungers for stimulation and recognition. It needs external proof instead of direct experience. Without that outer proof, the person feels unseen and unreal. The crisis of modernity is more than overthinking, overwork, or lack of community. It is that more and more people do not feel value in themselves. We feel we must perform it, and it makes our love for ourselves and for others unstable. It drains meaning from our work and fills our lives with anxiety.
So, a man is not complete when he is in a world of the statistical truth. He must live in a world with biological truth. That with this biological truth that we not here with statistics, of with the expression of what he really is, as what he feels himself. So somebody without the mythology is really an effect of statistics, as it were, the elaborate phenomenon. And while the truth is, the carriers of life are individuals, not average number, yet our natural science links everything to an average, reduces everything to an average, and of course, all the individual qualities are wiped out. But that, of course, is most unbecoming. It is unhygienic. It deprives people of their specific values, where they are individually. It deprives them of the most important experience of their life, where they experience their own value, maybe the creative background of their personality. I think the trouble is that nobody understands things being apparently.
This is one of Jung's great warnings. Statistical truth is not enough for us. We cannot live, love, or suffer as an average. And yet, modern civilization teaches us to see ourselves that way, as a profile, a demographic, a user. Once we agree to live that role, we lose contact with our singularity. We stop asking, who am I becoming? Instead, we ask, am I visible enough, useful enough, approved of enough? Gradually, we develop a false self and identify with it. The modern world offers endless fragments of identity, styles to wear, lives to imitate. Our personalities become polished and impersonal. We lose contact with our own values and meaning. We carry a self that lacks feeling and uniqueness. We can still function and work, but we are not truly present, and the psyche won't accept it.
There are two possibilities of human connection. The one is technical, by the boss and the employee, the bus conductor and the passenger and so on, and that is organized by rules and even organized nowadays by psychological rules. There are training programs for managers, how they manage the employees and so on, and that is all rationalized. And the one thing which is always left out is the liking and the disliking, and the feeling reaction. For instance, what does not count, a woman would sometimes like to say, this sounds all very logical, but I have a strong feeling against it. No, nobody would put any attention to that nowadays. If she cannot formulate it as a logical deduction, just to say my feeling tells me, my feeling instinct tells me this is no good, then one just ignores it, one walks over her. And men do the same thing. Men have feelings too, but they ignore them. They think, they have a funny feeling in their stomach, and they think, oh, that is a jet lag or something, and they rationalize it away. They don't listen to the reactions of the heart. And that's what so many so-called primitive people or so-called people of underdeveloped countries reproach us, quite rightly, because whatever their shortcomings are, they listen more to those feelings. To an Australian Aborigine, you could still say, today I have a bad feeling, I won't move out of the camp. Or that fellow seems to make a very good offer to us, but I somehow don't like him, and therefore I'll keep away from him. That you can tell still to an Australian Aborigine, but if you say that to a white American businessman, he'll just think, oh, well, women.
This is the social and relational consequence of depersonalization. Once human connection becomes technical, relationships become transactions. People no longer meet each other as mysteries, but as functions. They seek stimulation and validation, not the difficult task of opening up, listening, and seeing the other. Intimacy and love are avoided. They require vulnerability and exposure. They demand the risk of being misunderstood. They introduce the possibility of dependence, loss, and rejection. Many would rather remain detached than become permeable. Control feels safer. But the suffering avoided consciously returns unconsciously as numbness and compulsivity among a variety of symptoms. One lives behind an invisible glass, encased like a machine.
On Valentine's Day, little Eros takes out his bow and arrow and dusts it off and flies around and fires into our hearts. And our hearts get lonely and they get sore and hearts can break. Have we built in our society a wall of rationality that his arrows can't penetrate? Are we in danger of losing our capacity to love and be loved?
I think that is the great problem number one of the Aquarian age, that the only thing which might save us from falling in the East and the West into a rationally over-organized mass society in which the individual is suffocated. We have those slogans now in politics: too much state, too much organization, and so on. So people are waking up to the fact of what is negative, that the computerizing of humanity, that having too many rules, rules are always impersonal, or they are for everybody. Everybody has to keep the rules and so on. All that massification which comes from the fact of overpopulation. It's not our fault. The overpopulation demands this organization, but that suffocates the individual. While if you study primitive communities or older agricultural communities, everybody knew everybody personally and related to each other personally. For instance, a lot of mentally sick people didn't need to be internalized because the community just suffered them. They laughed and they said, oh, well, you know, so and so. I even remember in a village I grew up, the first day we moved in, a man came and said, my father is a kleptoman and he steals everything. So if things are stolen from you, please don't go to the police. Just come to me and I'll hand them back to you. So you see, the poor old man, kleptoman, didn't need to go to an asylum. Everybody knew his little fault and corrected it. That is personal relationship. He belonged personally to the community, including his faults. And such a society, there are less criminals and there are less people ready for the lunatic asylums. Such a community can carry the individual or stand the individual and leave it a certain leeway of freedom with a kind of shrug of shoulder. Oh, well, he is like that or she is like that, in a pardoning shrug of the shoulders. People are taken for what they are. And that's what we have lost, and that's what we have to restore again in some new form.
Too much of life organized by systems that do not acknowledge the unique person. Too many impersonal rules. Too much abstraction. It makes us feel redundant. An insignificant cog inside a vast machine. That is a devastating psychological attitude. Once we begin to feel that our individuality does not matter, our lives are drained of meaning. Then we oscillate between trying to compensate through grandiosity and collapsing into despair. That is a symptom of our entire civilization. We desperately try to convince the world how exceptional we are, all while wearing the mask and secretly feeling that we are nothing, that our existence contributes nothing. Our personal gifts to the world remain buried and unrealized. We fail to bear the heavy responsibility of becoming ourselves. Eros cannot live in a statistical world. It requires a personal encounter, the recognition that this person matters, that this soul is unique and carries an irreplaceable essence. This is why the arrow of Eros is so dangerous to a mechanized civilization. Because the moment it strikes, a person remembers, I am not a number, I am a soul.
We are so crushed by the mass-mindedness of our civilizations. due to the problem of overpopulation. Everybody feels superfluous. Everybody feels if I would be removed to the cemetery, that would change nothing in the whole reality. Mankind would just teem on this planet, and there would be just one less who eats the food, and that would be really a blessing. So the mass-mindedness and our whole situation crushes us and makes us feel superfluous and unimportant. In our professional life, we can always be replaced by 20 others who want the same post. There's a bustling around about having the same position. And that has a very destructive effect on modern man. Either he compensates it by becoming ambitious and megalomanic and wanting to be the top dog to at least achieve something, or he feels completely crushed and superfluous, and there's a kind of sneaky depression coming up in him. And that sneaky depression you find, for instance, nowadays in many young people. They are kind of in a hidden way deeply depressed and discouraged. They don't believe in their own life and in the meaning of their own existence. Now, all the dreams center around pointing out to the individual the meaning, the unique meaning of its unique life.
Hidden depression is one of the defining moods of modern life. It is often invisible from the outside. A person's life may appear normal, even successful, and yet his life lacks a deeper sense of purpose and necessity, a direct connection to something larger than oneself. The person continues through life, but cannot consciously carry a why. This is where the Jungian perspective becomes essential. The soul refuses to be reduced to mere function and repetition. It protests through painful feelings, breakdowns, and recurring dreams.
You can say in a forest there are 2,000 trees, but if you look at it closer and accurately, every tree is a personality. Not two trees are the same. They are all personalities. And nature becomes real or fulfills its patterns in unique, individuated beings. That's why statistical thinking is so detrimental, so harmful. We say in this heap there are stones of 1 kilo of weight, but if you look at the stone heap itself, there's not one stone which is 1 kilo. One is 2 kilos and one is 1/2 kilo and so on. And we have to learn again to look at the uniqueness of the real thing. Reality consists of an enormous amount of unique beings. And dreams help us to find the unique pattern of our life. That's why one of the most frequent complaints in modern psychological practice is that people say, my life has no meaning. And they shrug their shoulders. They say, my life has no meaning. What for? What am I there for? What's the use of it all? I could just as well not exist. And there the dream are a unique help to point out what the unconscious wants of that person, namely what it wants that person to become. And that's often very surprising. I try sometimes to guess when some people comes to me. You see, what will come out of them? Is that a creative problem, or will that girl who is so unhappily in love get her Jack or John, or will, and so on. I never guess right. It's always a complete surprise what comes out of it. But after the event, you see, that is now uniquely the solution for that person. That's not a collective solution. That's why we feel sometimes very discouraged in publishing case material, because people think, that's the solution of a depressive problem, or that's the solution of an unhappy marriage problem, or so on. It isn't. It is only the solution for that person, of that case, and in another case it's different. That's why it's even dangerous to publish case material. in a way, because people identify and think it's their solution, and it's not their solution. It's that other person's solution. It's every time surprising and unique, and that makes the work on dreams so exciting because it never repeats. And you can never guess. It's always a creative answer of nature.
What the modern world flattens, the dream tries to restore. The psyche emphasizes what the system suppresses. Every tree is a personality. It is both a beautiful image and a psychological law. Reality is made of unique beings, and when we ignore this truth, life becomes unbearable, and we live split from our individuality. That is why Jung insisted that man cannot live by statistical truth alone. He must also live by mythological truth. He must discover the deeper pattern of his own being, the living symbol, the inner law, the hidden center. Without that, he becomes dependent on systems and impersonal approval. He becomes addicted to stimulation and outer conditions. The turning point appears when a person begins to realize that his life is not random and that his path cannot be a collective one. He begins to suspect that he is here to become something that cannot be mass-produced. He comes face to face with individuation, the difficult, circular, costly process of becoming himself. Not a fragmented personality that imitates what the system dictates. The task is to resist inner mechanization, to recover eros, feeling, and the body, to rediscover the symbolic life and the dream life, to ask what is trying to live through me, what in me is real and what is merely adapted. What have I accepted simply because it is expected of me? What grief have I not felt? What love have I neglected? The computerizing of humanity does not happen because of machines. It happens when a person consents to live as a function and ignores the soul. Do not let this age convince you that your individuality is negotiable. Do not let it persuade you that your life is only one more unit in an infinite system. You are not here to become an empty instrument. You are here to become a whole person, and that is far more difficult. But it is also the one task that may save a human life from becoming a senseless pattern. The future will not be healed by better systems alone. It will be healed by individuals who refuse to become mere functions and embrace their unique value, one individual at a time.
As the world becomes more technically efficient, it seems increasingly necessary for people to behave communally and collectively. Now, do you think it possible that the highest development of man may be to submerge his own individuality in a kind of collective consciousness?
That's hardly possible. I think there will be a reaction. The reaction will set in against this communal dissociation. You know, man doesn't stand forever his nullification. Once there will be a reaction, and I see it setting in. You know, when I think of my patients, they all seek their own existence, and to assure their existence against that complete atomization into nothingness or into meaninglessness. Man cannot stand a meaningless life.
If you feel caught between outer adaptation and inner emptiness, if you struggle with meaning and would like companionship on the challenging path of individuation, I invite you to meet for a depth conversation, as well as join one of the small groups I hold space for those who want to reconnect with soul, symbol, and others walking a similar path. You'll find the links in the pinned comment. I'd be honored to meet you.